Hello and welcome to Redshirt Cinema Club, a weekly podcast about falling in love with Star Trek. This week we've been watching the last ever Star Trek movie, Star Trek Beyond. Can you believe it? What a journey we've been on together. Join us as we confuse simple musical genres, unequivocally hate the Yorktown, and discuss why there hasn't been another Star Trek movie yet, but there still could be. Is Rob still a Star Trek fan? Always and forever? Only one way to find out.
Is that music?
It's a good choice.
Hey, well played.
We got no ship. No crew. How are we gonna get out of this one?
We will find hope in the impossible.
Well, at least I won't die alone. Well, that's just typical. Let's hope this doesn't get messy.
This is where it begins, Captain. This is where the frontier pushes back.
What the hell is this?
I know why you're here. Why we are all here.
Okay, let's never do that again.
Hello and welcome back to Redshirt Cinema Club. My name is David Jackson, your captain as always. And as always, I'm joined today by Lieutenant Nathan Dighton.
Enjoy being captain for the last time, Dave.
And, maybe a demotion, Rob.
What?
Not for you. I'm starting a mutiny, although it's not really a
What?
mutiny
You're
because
the
I'm the captain. And Ensign Rob Pearson.
Hello.
Star Trek fan. Ensign Rob Pearson.
That's
I like
right.
saying it, and it is.
Special
You're right,
commendation.
Nath. We've reached the end of the
It
Star
doesn't
Trek
feel
movies.
good. It doesn't feel good
To be a Star
being
Trek
a fan of Star Trek.
No,
As is the case with being a fan with, I think,
I was going to say, can
most
you
other
think of any
things.
fandom that it feels good to be a part of?
No.
They hurt you more
just
than
pain. Being a fan of something,
Caring about things.
be it a franchise or a football club, it only brings you pain.
If you're
Yeah.
a Palace fan,
I
bit of
bet.
football chat.
Yeah.
Eh? Ooh.
I bet even as a Star Wars fan, I bet if I had been there for Return of the Jedi, like if I'd been there for it, I bet I would have been disappointed.
Yeah.
Really?
Off the back of Empire Strikes Back.
I
yeah,
think with this perfect generation, which received those three movies, is these are great. But I do think people were like, the Ewoks, as they say in space, the Ewoks were rubbish.
Yeah.
They are rubbish.
I've watched Return of the Jedi a million times, and in later viewings, I have been a bit like,
We were talking about
Yeah.
this on the Slack channel in work.
Endor's
and
not great.
I was thinking about Jabba's palace, and as I wrote on Slack, it's just bullshit animals.
yeah.
I don't think I'd have liked it at the time.
But we're not here to talk about Star Wars. We're talking about Star Trek. Rob is officially a fan, and we've reached the last movie, the very last Star Trek movie that's ever been made.
I know.
Which feels quite weird to say, especially because we've watched so many, and also, to be honest, a bit sad because I've really, really enjoyed doing this with you guys. I've really enjoyed going back and revisiting these movies for better and for worse, and I'm really pleased that it was a success in making Rob a Star Trek fan, which was, not necessarily on the cards.
And we haven't scripted this, but we do also need to give a bit of time at the end of this episode to discuss what we're going to be doing next, which is probably telling people more about that in another episode.
Exactly. So make sure you stick around to the end. And also there is, it's possible that this movie has turned Rob against Star Trek now. We will wait until the end to find out. So yes, we've been watching Star Trek Beyond, the very last Star Trek movie. If you haven't watched it, there will be tons of spoilers, as always, in this episode for that movie, starting right now as we get into it, as we always do, but for the last time, with Rob's synopsis of Star Trek Beyond.
So this film, there's another cold opening. I really enjoyed the cold opening to the previous film, Into Darkness. Thought it was really good. Not so much this one. So Kirk is like parlaying with an alien, right? The CG's done its thing. It's like living in that era of CG where CG is just bad,
Yeah.
I think. Like these aliens that Kirk is talking to that don't feel real in any conceivable way, and there's a really cheap gag where they go to attack him and it turns out they're actually tiny. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
But quickly we're back on board the Enterprise. I think he's failed to do whatever he wanted to do to, make peace with whatever race of aliens this is. So we're like halfway into the 5-year mission. The crew, especially Kirk's, all feeling a bit disillusioned, and there are quite a few scenes as we dock in Yorktown, like a big wraparound sci-fi utopia. We dock into Yorktown like a new Federation outpost. Kirk is applying for a promotion to Vice Admiral.
Vice
Admiral. He feels quite disillusioned. He's questioning his place. He's questioning his purpose as captain of the Enterprise. Did I do as well as my dad? Would my dad be proud of me? All these questions. And he recommends that Spock be made captain of the Enterprise. But Spock, meanwhile, is suffering is going through his own torment. He learns that Ambassador Spock has died, mirroring the real life death of Leonard Nimoy, and he's also feeling very sad about that. And his relationship with Uhura has finally come to an end. Thank God. So that's the kind of scene we're in. There's a lovely scene between Bones and Kirk, very reminiscent of some of the scenes we saw between the pair in the original movies, where Bones brings Kirk some nice alcohol for his birthday, and they share a drink together and have a friendly chat and reminisce about times past. But as is always the case whenever they're anywhere for shore leave, be it Yosemite or here in Yorktown, there's always a communication, a distress signal from somewhere. Someone needs rescuing. Something bad's happened somewhere in space. I can't remember the name of the alien that sends this distress signal. I only remember that she has
Snake Lady.
Yeah, a head. An alien
She's
head.
got a head, yeah.
So please, we're in a bad way. We're in the middle of this nebula. Please come and save us. And so the crew of the Enterprise, off they go, piloting through a nebula with lots of rocks all crashing, lots of meteorites. They go through like an asteroid field.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're flying through that, but Sulu is obviously like, yeah, I can do it, of course. And so they do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem particularly big or bad.
I would just go around it. Anyway, they get to where the distress signal has happened, and it's bad. The Enterprise is attacked catastrophically by an unknown force, like a swarm of little mini drone ships, which initially rips off the warp engines, like the big iconic
Nacelles,
cannons at the back.
Yeah.
They just get ripped off, and Scotty can't believe it. It's just, I can't get us to warp, Kirk.
You can't fix that, can you?
They've gone.
Yeah.
They've just gone. And so gradually the situation just gets worse and worse and worse. These drones are just absolutely ripping through the Enterprise. A mysterious alien race is coming on board. We're fighting inside the Enterprise. It's going very badly. Mysterious enemy called Kral is introduced, and he gives the order eventually to cut the Enterprise's throat, which basically means just ripping off the disc. And Kirk gives the order eventually to abandon ship. There's nothing anyone can do, so everyone's getting in their little escape pods. There was a shot where Kirk, I think he's the last one to go in his escape pod. He comes out of the escape pod and just witnesses the disc of the Enterprise crashing onto the planet below.
The saucer section.
The saucer section.
The saucer section.
The saucer section.
Let's be accurate.
Yeah. Okay. The crew is scattered. Many of the crew have been captured by this mysterious alien called Kral. We don't know where they've been taken. The crew that have managed to escape Kral are scattered and have crash landed on the planet. They've got no ship. They're stranded. They're doomed. Spock is quite badly wounded. He ends up with Bones, and Bones manages to take this bit of debris out of Spock's heart area. Turns out
Yeah.
Vulcan, this is the first time I learned this,
Who knew?
Vulcan's hearts are where human livers are.
Yeah.
Scotty encounters an alien called Jailer, who kicks ass.
Yeah.
She kicks some ass.
She's
and
very capable.
She takes Montgomery Scotty, she calls him, very endearingly. She takes him to the little sort of makeshift base that she's made for herself on this planet. She is like part of I'm guessing, a crew that has previously encountered Krull, and from all accounts is the last surviving member of that crew. Her father tragically killed by one of Krull's sort of
his henchman,
right-hand man, whose name I can't recall.
Steve.
But she has obviously a lot of beef with Krull and is also quite fearful of Krull. So she's living on this little outpost that she's made within the ruins, mysteriously, conveniently, of another Federation ship, the Franklin, the USS Franklin, which is from the before times, to the extent where it's got Beastie Boys playing on the radio. Yeah. Or is it Beastie Boys initially?
Not at this point, no.
Just another song with beats and shouting, as
Fight the Power.
Jailer calls it. I don't know the names of any of the songs or the bands. Some metal music is playing.
It's hip hop, isn't it?
Yeah. So Kirk, I think, is whatever it is.
He doesn't listen to Top of the Pops.
I don't know.
We could win an award for the lightest podcast.
Yeah. Some metal or other.
So they, Scotty and Jailer, they quickly encounter Kirk, although not after Kirk, who with the alien snakehead lady, she gets killed. She's dead. Kirk's annoyed with her anyway because she's like, "You lied. You only brought us down here because you did. She did it to save her crew. Basically, she thought Krull had told her, if you bring me another crew."
That was line number 2.
Yeah,
That was line number
do you
2.
not remember the double cross?
Line number 3 is she was just working for Krull.
Just
the whole
working
time.
for Krull.
Yeah.
Anyway, she gets her just desserts.
Yeah.
She's gone.
It's a horrible. She's crushed by the entire.
She sort of
section.
like looks up at it. She does the thing. She does the thing that the "I'm going to die" look now.
Well, what can you do?
And it's crushed to death. Jailer and Scotty soon encounter Kirk and Chekhov, I believe, and the crew starts getting back together, and we go from no hope to maybe there's a little bit of hope. We've got a base. It turns out it's an old ship. Can we get it running again? Is there any way we can save the old crew? And so they hatch a daring plan, which Jailer is not happy about because she's like, if we go near Krull's camp, we're just going to be killed. Krull, meanwhile, is after some kind of ancient relic, which I didn't really understand where it had come from or what it did, but he wanted it, and one of the Enterprise crew had hidden it inside her alien hair.
That was disgusting. Hated that.
Yeah, like the reverse face hugger.
The fact that it was sort of a damp membrane. Not my favourite.
But
also, like, then thinking back to Kirk seeing her on the Enterprise and going like,
Perfect.
Margaret, come on, you know your little weird head pocket? Can I stick something in there? That's not nice.
That's the way I remember that now. I need to speak with you. Okay, sir, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to hide the relic in there. But she gives up the relic to save one of the other crew members who Krull is about to kill. Can't remember who
Sulu.
it is. Maybe, is it Sulu or Uhura? One of them. Sulu and Uhura are both there. I couldn't remember which one Krull was about to hurt badly.
You're
Anyway.
a Star Trek fan, sure.
She has a terrible time of it because then she basically. She's then the weapon is tested on her in a minute.
Yeah.
She's like, well, I just feel bad. She kind of lets Kirk down by giving over the thing, and then for her efforts is killed.
It's all bad for her. And we're learning a bit more about Krull. He seems to have this strange power. He drains the life out of other people and sort of changes his own appearance slightly, like he's regenerating or something.
Yeah.
It's all very odd, and he's got this weapon now that can just... And he wants to destroy Yorktown with it, basically. He's got beef with the Federation Krull. He's finally got this thing. He's like, I'm going to go. So that's Krull's plan. Meanwhile, the Kirk and Jailer and Scotty and Chekhov, they hatch a plan to save the rest of the crew. Spock and Bones join the gang by now as well. They're all on the Franklin. It's a daring plan, and Kirk provides a distraction, which is, I'm going to ride around on this old motorbike that I found on the Franklin because that's cool. Yeah. But he also uses Jailer's special smoke stuff that comes out.
Yeah.
And she's also got
I like that stuff.
a clone device where she can project images of herself which aren't really there. And Kirk uses that to great effect as well to confuse and confound Krul's minions. So there's lots of Kirks on lots of bikes driving around, confusing everything whilst Jayla and everyone else goes in and kicks some ass. Jayla has a fight with the guy who killed her dad.
Steve.
It's a pretty good fight. Jayla does really well, does some good kicks and martial arts. And they do manage to, in groups of 20, using the quite primitive beaming capabilities of the Franklin, Scotty is able to beam the crew back. And well done, everybody. But Krul doesn't seem to care that much about that anymore because he's got the weapon. He's like, I'm going to go to Yorktown now and just kill everyone there. So off he goes. The only way that the Enterprise crew could stop him is if they managed to somehow get the Franklin flying again. And they do manage to do that.
Yeah, don't worry, we've done it.
And off they go after Krul, which sets up the climactic final scene in Yorktown where Krul tries to set the weapon off. Uhura realizes from a tiny little bit of video footage, I don't know how she manages to recognize him.
It's some Blade Runner nonsense. Enhanced.
She hears his voice. I guess she's meant to have amazing ears.
There's like it turns out that the old captain of the Franklin, one Balthazar Edison,
Great name,
played by Idris Elba, he is Krul, and I didn't quite understand the transformation he's gone through from human to his appearance.
We can discuss it.
Here.
I'm not sure I do either.
I didn't understand because it seems to me that as he gradually absorbs the life force of other people, he moves closer and closer back to his human form. And the final form we see him in is like Idris Elba with a little bit of prosthetics.
I think that's because at the end he's absorbing humans.
He's absorbing humans.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay, so he was absorbing aliens before.
I would believe so.
Maybe
It's-
just
it's
worms.
not clear.
Just
he's
anything.
absorbing humans. And he's, the Federation left him to die. He's a soldier. His life was all about conflict. And when the Federation were like, actually, we're going to make peace with the Romulans, he was like, no, we can't do that. And he was, he had an accident with a wormhole and was left for dead on this planet and has been stewing there ever since, prolonging his life artificially, ready for this moment where he can come back and get revenge. And there's a big chase through the city. Bones is piloting a ship. He doesn't want to. Spock's also on the ship with him. They do some stuff. The Franklin does a cool move where it comes up right in front of Krul and captures him.
That was cool.
He acts as a shield
That
almost.
was good.
That was a good bit. And then ultimately they're in like some kind of vent in the city where Krul can disperse this horrible weapon and kill everyone, and Kirk's got to stop him in a one-on-one fight, and they exchange ideas as they exchange punches. Kirk wins. Spock and Bones save Kirk, and Krul and the weapon are ejected out into space, where Krul has maybe a couple of moments to think about what he's done before being killed.
Yeah.
And then the Enterprise gets rebuilt in a time lapse.
I like that
For
time
future
lapse.
adventures.
Yeah.
Ready for
1701A.
upcoming adventures, which never happened, I guess. Or
Haven't happened
at
yet.
least we haven't seen them happen. I'm sure they did happen.
They
Yeah.
happened, but we never saw them.
They
that
all
was-
lived
that was the
happily
end.
ever
There's
after.
probably loads of books we
Oh,
can
and Uhura and Spock got together again.
Oh yeah.
Hooray.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with, as we do with just a general. Did you enjoy it?
No.
Did you enjoy it, Nate?
Nope.
Can I
Not
tell
really.
you about my reaction? I had like a slightly roller coastery reaction, which was I hated the intro, same as
Yep.
you, Rob. I thought this is awful, and then I didn't like the Yorktown. I don't like the design of it. But as soon as
That competing
that's
gravity
my major big beef with it is Yorktown.
No
Yeah.
one's making
Dreadful.
that. No one's
also,
making
they were meant to be on this deep space mission, but then Well, we'll just pop back to this.
to Yorktown. Really
it's
nice.
fine.
We're so
I really
far
miss
away
everyone.
from
We're so
everyone.
far apart from this massive
Yeah, we can
city
just
where
pop in.
Sulu's family are apparently, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's fine.
I can never come and see you, my daughter. I'm so sorry. Except next
right now.
weekend.
Yeah,
I'll
I will
there.
be back next
It's
weekend.
just one of those. It's one of those CG concoctions that around this, 2016 time.
Yeah.
So many places like this. Look how big and amazing. There's no sense of place to it. There's no
No.
sense of scale to it. I don't. It just. I thought it was awful.
It's like an evolution of that
Just
classic.
a nothing. Big hot air.
Because
nothing.
people talk about like massive, like livable constructions in space. There's the Ringworld idea, right?
Yeah.
Larry Niven and is it Larry Niven? Yeah, it's not David Niven. And it's obviously in Halo. It's like taken up, and that's how you would do it. You wouldn't
Yeah.
have 1,000 different
No.
intersecting rings and
But
planes
also,
of gravity. It's stupid.
They even say in the movie, Bones even says like, "Why have we done that? Why not just use a planet?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, because we don't want to offend anyone." It's like, well, yeah, but you're putting this somewhere. It's it's just nonsense. But anyway, then when the kind of action starts, when that distress signal is received, I started to really enjoy the movie, and I couldn't. Here's the funny thing that you need to understand is I couldn't remember any of this. So I was watching this, and I started to doubt I'd seen this movie before. I was like, I don't remember any of this, and I'm actually having quite a good time now. I'm interested in who this bad guy is. I really liked the hive ships. I thought that that was a cool idea, and they're so powerful. There's no defense
Aren't they?
against them.
Isn't that interesting? Where are they from?
I know. And I was kind of like along for the ride. I really enjoyed the way that they dispersed the crew, the different groups of characters. I thought
did
was
enjoy
good.
that.
And so I was in for it. And then I saw the motorbike, and there was this thing in the back
Yes.
of my head, which
Yes.
was, why do I keep thinking about Beastie Boys?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, hang on, Beastie Boys was in the first movie though. When we first meet Kirk as a boy, he's riding that motorbike and the Beastie Boys is playing. I must be getting confused with Star Trek, the first movie. It can't be this movie. And then we saw the motorbike, and I had a flashback. I was like, why am I thinking about
Just a wave
Kirk
of
on
pain.
a motorbike?
No,
I must be
no.
thinking of Star Trek. And then I think as soon as he gets on the motorbike, there's a bit. The other thing that happened was there was a monologue with Krul. I quite liked Krul as a bad guy until there was a monologue, and suddenly I just remembered or realised that it was Idris Elba, and I was just like, that's just Idris Elba in loads of makeup.
Yeah.
It's just Idris Elba. It's Idris Elba. And I was like, what's happening? I'm not in the movie anymore. I'm not enjoying the movie. And then the motorbike happened, and I was like, I hate this motorbike bit. This is awful. And then, of course, there's the sabotage Beastie Boys bit, which was awful.
Terrible.
And I thought it was so un-Star Trek. I
glad you
really
hated that.
enjoyed the
Hated it.
I really enjoyed the hive. Hey, they're all communicating. I was like, yeah, this is Star Trek. They're all communicating. Now you're thinking, how can we disrupt it with some really loud music from the 90s?
That
No.
bit where they all quickly realised how they could sabotage the communication of the hive was so contrived in that contrivey way.
Yeah.
You could just oh, it annoys me. I just see them in their little writer's room. Wouldn't it be cool if we did a bit where they just played the Beastie Boys really loud? Yeah, let's figure out how we make that happen in the film.
There was a real smugness to it. I didn't like it's funny because my memories are very similar in that I remembered the motorbike and not enjoying that. And I still remember that. Also, the fact that it feels, and some people take this as a positive, it feels a lot like an old episode because they're basically like just in a quarry. This quarry could be anywhere. Everyone gets taken away. Oh, they're all of the crew. And it's like, what that means is 10 people standing up in a cage for an hour. It's like, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
And I also remembered Sabotage playing over the motorbike. So I don't know if that was in a trailer.
I think it was in a trailer, yeah.
And then when it happens at the end, my big problem with the end, I've got tons of problems. And I do think the smugness is the thing which really comes through and stops me from enjoying what's happening. But the idea that it's, as you say, contrived so that Sabotage can simply blow these things up. I thought the idea was it was disrupting their communication.
Exactly.
Why are they fucking
didn't show that at
exploding?
all.
There was
I
an
know.
extra little line where it's like, oh, if it disturbs their communication so much, they'll just combust.
Yeah.
I guess.
But
And
not Bones' ship. And thank God they've got the best pilot in all of Starfleet. I mean, what's that? Why is he flying the ship? He's the last man who wouldn't even choose to do that. And yeah, it made no sense that all the ships were blowing up apart from their ship, especially when someone who's never flown one before is at the controls.
I felt like and I'm sad that I'm so negative, and I don't really understand. I really thought that having watched everything and come back to this point again with the reputation that this movie's got in Star Trek fans, I thought I'll probably see something different this time. It seems to me to embody the worst of all the stuff that Abrams was doing in the last two movies, and it cares even less about Star Trek. I really hated that it fell into that trap of, and it kind of doubles down on it. We've hired a big star to be the villain. You can't recognize him, and I know that then comes back into the plot. It's like a plot where you're not supposed. If you could recognize him, maybe they'd have recognized him earlier on. But it still means that you spend the entire movie not watching Idris Elba. You're watching grey plasticine like growling.
Yeah.
It's rubbish.
Yeah, it is rubbish. And I really didn't understand his character arc. You know, even when they literally sit you down and show you some captain's logs, he looked pretty chill in the captain's log. Yeah, he was.
Also, the captain's log looked like they filmed it in one afternoon.
Yeah,
just mess up his face.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time for this, Idris. So,
can I have a chair? No, just stand up and do it.
Just get angry. So the whole. Everything is just brushed over so quickly. Things that really can't be. They do make a deal of him sucking the life out of people. And
how is he doing it?
Don't explain anything. I think that planet is. It had some. It's in a captain's log. They very quickly say there was some ancient technology that they found on the planet, and I assume that he's got some bit of technology on him that means he can suck the life out of people.
So these guys went through a wormhole. They find a mining colony, not like a high tech.
Right.
I can already see Rob's fed up with
and
this,
the people
picking
have
holes
left.
in the plot. But they've got immortality tech. They've got the most powerful weapon in the galaxy that can strip flesh off people. And they have ships, mining ships, powerful enough to destroy the Federation's flagship. Yeah. It's utter bullshit.
It is.
It's like, I don't mind going with stuff when underneath there's something which I'm enjoying or can this bit isn't important because the main theme is this. At the end, there were so many of those mining ships. How many? He said there's 4 crew left.
I know.
They're recruiting. I get that they're recruiting. There are thousands and thousands of those ships. Where are they all sat on the planet?
And also, why on earth did he need this weapon? The weapon was rubbish. It was so rubbish. They just tell you that it's good, but we saw it used on one woman very slowly. I was like, a phaser would be quicker than this.
Yeah.
And then the ships are amazing. The ships destroy the Enterprise. Go to the Yorktown, just fly the ships in.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? You've got all the things you need. Not like this very slow black smoke. Why didn't they show us a whole load of people being killed very quickly by this terrifying black smoke?
It would have been horrible.
Rather than
then it would have felt like we've already lost, I guess.
It was like...
Or we could have been a flashback.
I thought...
The mining accident that meant they all left. And also, why in mining have they invented something which strips all of the organic matter off a human or a humanoid being?
I thought it was the hunt for the doodad. I was in for it. I was like, I liked that Kirk had hidden it. I liked the double cross.
Again, how contrived that was, though. It's the thing which Kirk offers to the small lion people, and then it's also just happens to be the thing,
the really important thing.
Then they found it.
None of it holds together under any scrutiny.
Do you remember last week I was saying how they had to write it super quick? It feels like something that's been written super quick.
Yeah, absolutely, it does because everything's very see-through if you look at it too long.
So that's the end of the podcast.
I know it's hard, but here's the funny thing is that I did enjoy that bit until I wasn't enjoying it. I felt like they had the bones of something, and if they hadn't have done all the nonsense, I think I would have gone with it more and not really looked in at all the details.
My enduring memory, though, was about it being stuck in a location I didn't really enjoy, and the motorbike feeling just like shark jump moment, really a bit stupid. Nothing else really stood out to me. So this other stuff annoys me more now that we've been through the Star Trek universe. Rob, was there anything you liked in the film?
I quite liked Jayla, actually.
Oh, really?
I thought she was pretty good. Found her quite likeable. I liked her little... I felt her, my father's been killed by this one particular alien, and then she has a fight with him.
Yeah.
That was probably the one bit of the film where I actually felt, okay.
Imagine if they had... that guy had used the tech on her dad, and then he looked like her dad, and then she had to fight him.
That would have been cool.
That would have been dark, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? But they didn't do that.
What a better idea that
I was
is.
fighting myself. I was like, because she's charming, but she's got like the sort of manic pixie alien engineer genius girl vibe to her. Do you know what I mean? Like she's so funny and cute and adorable, but really also great at stuff. And it was a bit much. I would have enjoyed seeing her as part of the crew in the further episodes.
I also didn't really feel like she actually needed anyone's help. She obviously like starts by being excited that Scotty's an engineer, but she's so capable. She's built this amazing, I just didn't get the sense that he was actually doing much to help her. Yeah. And then there's even a bit where he's failing to plug in the speakers, and she has to do it. It's like it's not. Yeah, no one's doing great.
You've already mentioned it. I enjoyed the mix of crew, and actually one of the things that Peg did talk about was how the previous two movies, and they all acknowledged it, the previous two movies had been Kirk and Spock centric, and there was a deliberate attempt to try and bring the three back into play, and they did that by putting Spock and Bones together. I thought that worked well. I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed the mix.
I agree. I thought it was handled the best out of all the reboots.
It was Carl Urban's least bad turn as Bones. I guess just because he had stuff to do. But on the flip side, I thought it was a nothing movie for Spock.
It's very true.
All he had to do was to be sad about other Spock.
Big Spock.
Should we talk about other Spock? Moment. I thought that were you touched? Were you moved? Did you think it was? I thought it was nicely. I felt that it worked. It's a little bit trite maybe, but it was.
I think having had him in the previous two films,
it makes sense.
It was probably you're treading that fine line between can we get him in again, even though he's dead, or paying a tribute to him. And I guess the plot must have been in development long before he passed away. I thought it was.
It was nice as a tribute, but in terms of I don't really know why Zachary Quinto's Spock. Does he know other Spock that well?
It must be weird if there's another version of you living in the same reality.
And also, that's the other thing, right? Like everyone
be relieved
that just the world knows there's two Spocks and just accepts it. Here's Ambassador Spock and here's
young Spock.
First Officer Spock.
Yeah, I guess they do.
I think it would give you pause even just to know when potentially you were going to die, I suppose.
Because the timelines are different now.
I know, but
just different people, aren't they? Ultimately.
Yes, I know. It's tricky, but I still think I think it is in the previous movie. Obviously Spock contacts Spock. I think that it's suggested that
it's the least meaningful Spock appearance in these three films, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was. I enjoyed it. I thought that one scene was enough. I didn't really need it to change Spock's whole outlook and everything. I just liked, can we speak to you for a minute, and then showing him the thing and him going,
yeah, that was pretty good.
I was like, that's nice.
And I guess I kind of liked the slight tension of they're all thinking of doing other things. They're all a bit bored with Star Trek. Doesn't necessarily play well now, knowing that none of those actors ever returned to Star Trek. But I liked it. That was quite nice. And then them realizing again, am I happy about that? I don't know. In a way, it's just the same tension, isn't it? They've just got the same notes and they just play them in different orders. Like, in this mythos, Kirk and Spock need each other. Let's just think of endless ways. Or you've met each other, you hate each other, now you're best friends. And you don't like rules and you love rules, now you swap so you can defeat Khan. And here it's like, you're both a bit bored? Well, you're not bored anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm bored.
This was another thing that only just struck me when we were talking about it earlier, but just there's tons of movies that show Kirk becoming admiral when he's very old.
Yes.
And like Kirk, who's been in space for 3 years, is like, I might be vice admiral, I think.
Yeah.
I fancy a bit of a promotion. Bored of all this space stuff.
And he's talking about it like he's got it as well. Yeah. And by the way, I would, you've got my application. I'd recommend Spock.
Yeah.
And it's like, mate, what if there are 50 other applications?
I'll just do this distress call and then I guess I'll be vice admiral after that. So yeah, no worries. Rubbish.
What did you like again, Dave? I'm trying to drag some.
What did I like? I thought a bit, as Rob maybe alluded to, I liked that Uhura had more to do by herself, but ultimately it was still about her following around Spock. I really wanted I wanted her to have broken up with him because she was bored of him or something, and instead it was just like she was just sad that he had broken up with her.
Well, there was, do you know what? At the beginning when they had that scene with the necklace, I quite enjoyed that scene. And I thought that they were going like, we've broken up, we're not really going to talk about it. And I thought that's, they're both being grown-ups. And especially, as I said before, I'm watching Strange New Worlds. It's an ongoing arc for 2 seasons, Spock and his love life. And I don't care about it. So just seeing it handled, I was like, great. And I think you're right. You look at it now, ultimately this series of movies is probably over. And they have Uhura just orbiting Spock the whole time.
That's all she does.
That's all she's
In this movie, she got another moment by herself, which is separating the saucer section, which I thought was cool. It was great. She went and basically rescued the captain.
Yeah, that is true.
It was good that she got to do that. And that was off the back of the Spock breakup. I was like, yes, this is good for Uhura. She's not orbiting Spock anymore. She's doing her own thing. And then it very quickly just became about like, oh, not really. I really miss you. We shouldn't have broken up. Oh, I love your necklace.
But I guess it was more from Spock being like, I am motivated
to
go on this rescue mission.
Yeah, it's really strange because, like I said, I enjoyed probably half of this movie at the time of watching it, and I can't think of a single redeeming thing now.
We've been incredibly negative. I'm very conscious, and when we try not to be a negative podcast. But and the strange thing is, I didn't watch this and go, "This is an abomination." It's more, I guess, that when you stress test it in a debating environment, there's loads of which I just thought was pretty ridiculous. I enjoyed this movie more than I've enjoyed. Probably, Generations, Insurrection, Nemesis. Insurrection specifically. It's a really terrible film, and there's very little to enjoy.
Yeah.
This was like disappointing in loads of ways. Maybe it's even more frustrating because of that. But I didn't have like a bad time.
No, I think they just went too far with the action. It was too ridiculous, and like again, the sabotage moment. Just
Can't believe you get the guy who directs all of the Fast and Furious movies, and he made it too full of action.
Yeah, this is the thing. The
There's
Fast
too
and
much
Furious
going on all the time.
The Fast and Furious movies are not for me either.
It's just that classic. It just felt it felt more contemporary than any of the other, either the previous two to me. But very much so. You could almost feel the shift in just the mise en scène of like that nebula bit where they're just all the asteroid field. Why? Well, it's just so unnecessary. And it's like the audience always has to have something to be looking at all times. It can't just be looking at the Enterprise flying through space. There's got to be just constant asteroids clashing and bashing into each other around it.
It's like the walkways in Yorktown.
The Yorktown was awful. It's one of my things I hate the most about big nothing CG settings. The best example for me is the difference between the miniatures used in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy and then the CG settings used in the Hobbit movies. It's so apparent immediately, as soon as you look at it, that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You can't latch onto anything. There's no sense of geography. I can't get my bearings at all in any of these places because they're not real places.
No.
And they just look crap. And it was just such a loud, constantly and unnecessarily moving
I agree.
load of nothing, this film.
I agree. I was just going to say like a general point around it that this really made me feel about the whole of this series of 3 films is that it's so different from the rest of Star Trek. Obviously it is Star Trek, but it's I was talking last week about how it didn't come from a TV show, and it's sort of just working on the image of general Trek, but especially that first series. And I think that this ties into what its objectives are different, and what it needs in order to succeed and continue is different, and its relationship with the audience is different. Like the fact it hadn't come conceived from the outset as a cinema only Trek with big budgets. It was supposed to be tentpole that could compete. It was never supposed to be that mid-sized movie economic version of it as all the other films had been. So there's no TV background, which means there's no connection to the audience. I feel like the audience can build up week by week and hour by hour. You love these crews, and you don't get any of that with these specific people. You get these characters that they're sort of amorphously supposed to be connected to and feel that connection with. And I just think you have it on a much weaker basis. It's all so theoretical. And then I think immediately that means that when one of them, one of the original series movies underperforms, it's, the loss is so much smaller than this. Whereas here, these are big bets, and everyone needs to win big. And it's just a completely different process and equation. And I think that's also in the beginning phases. It's why this film is like it is. It's why Justin Lin is directing it. It's why it's not got that kind of for the diehard appeal. It kind of makes me think ultimately you can't do Star Trek big, because you have to get it. I don't even know what that would look like. But it isn't Star Wars. That, like, by its very definition, it isn't. It's this other thing which has existed in TV and in a couple of other different environments, and then been celebrated on the big screen. But it's not ever going to be, we'll make it for $300 million and it will make $1 billion. I don't think that's ever going to happen with Star Trek. And
No.
I feel like that's why they've stopped making it.
Well, I guess they haven't stopped making it, have they? It now exists, I guess, in serial format again.
Yeah.
And the emergence of
That's what I meant.
streaming services have given Star Trek probably a more suitable home. I don't know if I'm ever going to bother watching the likes of Discovery and Picard and all the other various spin-offs, but it feels to me like that gives them the room to make enough of it for there to be enough of it that lands.
Well, do you know
again.
what I was thinking was, I'm not sure it's ever going to land in the same way. And I think that's just because our entertainment landscape is so fractured and atomized, and the stuff that's huge is huge. It's on, like stuff on Netflix, like a Stranger Things or something. They're never going to make a Discovery movie.
No.
They made, I don't know how many episodes, 65, I think. I wrote it down just before this, of Discovery. That's a successful Star Trek TV show. It's never going to make that journey. And I don't think there's an audience who loves it in the same way. And I think that when you're on one of the 3 network channels that exist in America, even if you're a rubbish show, the amount of exposure you're getting, and then the chance for that to sort of ferment and become a huge cult success.
But
It's different.
are TV shows is that journey from your TV show is popular enough? We're going to make it. We're going to celebrate it with a movie. It just doesn't
happen.
need to happen now. Like,
No.
you wouldn't make a Stranger Things movie.
No.
The last episode of Stranger Things is like 2.5 hours long. It is a movie.
That's
It's
true.
like 10 movies. That's what a season is. You wouldn't have a Game of Thrones movie.
Well, and you're right. And in the same way, you don't make 26 mid-budgeted episodes of TV. You make 10 or 12 medium-budgeted episodes of TV. So it is like they're closer to...
I could imagine
together.
just a brand new movie. That's all I could see. I think that the
think
universe
that's
is
what they'll
interesting.
do.
The Star Trek universe, it's deep, and there are lots of Star Trek fans who could be interested in something new if you pitched it right. I don't know exactly what that would be, but I can't see characters returning, and I can't see, like you said, any of the TV shows evolving into a movie, because it doesn't need to happen, and I don't think they are that popular anyway.
Do you know, it made me think, we were having this chat, Dave, about Marvel, and I just think that they have captured that sense of connection and ongoing, or people reacting to different relationship shifts or different team ups or different putting the characters into different situations, and they've done that on that huge scale, and that's like incredibly hard to pull off, high risk strategy. But again, combining, as we were just saying, but instead of going down to that low level budget, you're doing it at the hugest budget level, and at their peak they were making 3 or 4 films a year, so they were having these like an incredibly active kind of fictional universe. They kind of managed to balance both, and now they're making fewer, and I think that time, and maybe it was a bit of a one-off, and whether that's because those characters and actors were so loved, or it was just that moment in cinema during this period actually when Beyond was coming out, I don't know. But I guess it just speaks to how our relationship as people who watch things is changing in the modern era.
It is, yeah, and that's been really interesting as well. Just throughout this podcast, just looking at the top grossing movies of each year, you can really see how the landscape has changed. And I don't know, the miserable part of me thinks it's not got better. But
I think that the good stuff still exists. It just squeezes out in different places.
it's hard not to look back with rosy glasses, I suppose. We should probably do the two bits we always do: the standout character or performance and the standout scene. This should be good. Let's start with you, Rob. Any standout character or performance?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jailer.
Jailer. Yeah.
Sophia Boutella, I believe, is the actor. She was the character I liked the most.
Yeah.
And I thought she gave as good a performance as she could have done.
I found myself looking at her makeup, those dark lines, and trying to see if they were completely the same every time, and just wondering what they were. How did they do that? Was that just some? I was just fascinated by her makeup, and it must be horrible to have to act under all that kind of stuff. Same for Idris Elba. How about you, Nath? Any standout performance?
Without. No.
You could say no.
No, I don't think so.
I also struggled with this. I thought everyone's very bland. I am going with Carl Urban because I think I've liked him throughout as Bones. I do think that this is Bones' best bit in the reboots. Bones' best bit. And, he does get that. I do think that is a positive in this movie. They got the character balance is much more where I wanted to see them.
The more I think about this film, the less I like it.
I know, I'm having that same issue. Definitely. And standout scene, I'll go first. Unfortunately, it's the motorbike scene. I don't even think it's the worst one. I think the sabotage one is worse. Yeah. But it was the moment when I fell off the film, I think, and was just like, this is going in a direction I can't go. I didn't like it at all. It's ridiculous that there's a motorbike on a spaceship, really.
Well, it's an old spaceship.
And it's the same one his dad had or something. And
it's got a bike on it.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Don't forget, Kirk in the original, he had all the old Navy stuff, didn't he?
Yeah.
In his room or wherever it was.
Yeah, that's true.
The old pistols and the old galleons and
that would, yeah. Oh, it's how will we defeat Krull? I've got a musket. Yes, this technology isn't adapted to muskets. That would work. Have you got a standout scene, Nath?
If it had been a different film and I was watching it for different reasons, the bees, the mining ships, were as pure spectacle. They were enjoyable. I just didn't like. I mean, what could you possibly use them for mining?
Just really digging into a big hole in the ground. I guess just fly into the planet, and
they seem perfect for destroying starships.
They're literally built for
on the side and then pulling.
And then they're really built for what do you call it? Boarding parties.
And they go into space. You don't mine,
there's lots of asteroids. Maybe those asteroids were one big planet and they got smashed up by the mining ships and caused an asteroid.
They were so just, stupidly powerful. And the Enterprise was so pathetically defenseless. It's like whenever you get a new saga of Dragon Ball Z. Everyone's just powered up to defeat the last baddie. And then a new baddie appears. He's like, oh my God, I can't even believe how powerful this baddie is.
Level.
Silly thoughts that I had during the movie and silly thoughts I had when I was watching Dragon Ball Z when I was younger. It'd be like, what if like a bad guy who would have been powerful in the first saga appeared on Earth, like in the Cell saga? I was like, ha 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 ha! I've got a power level of 900, and they just flick him away. Anyway, also just in terms of like whenever they encounter a new baddie, they always seem impossibly powerful. Why do they always they take turns, don't they, these baddies? Imagine if Krull and his mining bees were enacting their plan at the same time that Khan was also trying to do, and they met each other, and they're like, actually, I'm trying to destroy the Earth right now.
The stupid thing was,
do you want to just?
Well, I'll take the Yorktown then. You take a.
The madness as well, being that Nero in the first film had a massive mining ship, which I was annoyed could beat the. What is it with these
from
mining?
The future?
And we've got to have a tally as well of how many times is the Enterprise going to get wrecked, crash land,
I'm so bored of it.
Destroyed, rebuilt. For God's sake,
I've seen it. I've seen literally that shot of the saucer section crashing into a planet, and I thought it was better in the rubbish movie that it happened
every
in
time the films end. It's always it's rebuilt now we're ready, let's have an adventure, we're back.
And again this time I quite liked it, but you identified the birthday scene with Bones, but he's moaning about being old again. Captain Kirk's moaning about being old. He's not old. He's just like,
35.
oh, I'm past it. I'm tired of all of this. It's like, it's ridiculous.
He's just a bit sad now, isn't he, in this film?
I want to do one more thing on these movies as a whole, which is to rank just the three. I'm interested to know where you think this one sits.
Because I think we're gonna be doing a full look back in a bonus episode.
We will, but
coming
before we
later
do
this
that,
week.
just taking them as a trilogy of movies, Rob, how would you rate them? Where would you put? What's
Number
the best
one would be Into Darkness.
I agree.
2 would be Star Trek, and number 3 would be Beyond.
I'm not sure. That's where I'm not sure. How about you, Nate?
I'm the same as Rob.
I can't remember much about Star Trek now, and it wasn't that long ago. But I just remember thinking it was pretty bad.
It was a fun romp that I didn't enjoy for reasons that annoyed me.
It was quite functional though, wasn't it? It was good at doing its job.
I think Beyond has a better Kirk. This is another thing I wanted to say. Not even a hint of sleazy Kirk in this one.
It's true.
There's a young alien lady who's very capable and does martial arts, and Kirk doesn't even wink at her.
No, I think
so. That's an improvement.
Do you know? I think maybe that's because he's gone through his, his student days, or whatever you want to call it. Now he's proper Kirk.
Yeah.
There is an irony to me that like I said, they stopped rebooting and they're finally into trekking.
There was one
And then it finishes.
exchange that I could almost imagine it being William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, which is when Kirk and Spock were like, was that what you wanted to talk to me about?
Yeah,
and they're
quite
like, more or less. And then Kirk also just says, more or less. I could see William Shatner delivering that line.
Yeah.
It felt like the most like William Shatner's Kirk that Chris Pine's Kirk had ever felt, fleetingly for that one moment.
Do you know? It makes you realise how good Shatner and Nimoy are.
Well, they're just different.
Great. No,
They're
just
much-
different.
They're these specific characters in this, they're just really
Well,
good.
those specific characters are them.
Yes.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
It's true. And also, I feel like that whole kind of reboot to then, the two movies, which were basically rebooting it. And I was kind of complaining maybe that's what Abrams does. He gets, he's good at bringing something back to life. And then what's he going to do with it? I feel like that also as audiences, we're sort of complicit in that. It's much more exciting to see someone do the magic trick of like, oh, I brought it back to life. You go like, oh, wow, amazing. This is a bit like the thing I love. And then just to watch it continue to be that. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm bored.
Oh
now.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not as good as.
I feel like, again, as modern audiences, we just want, constant wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
We're idiots.
Yes, I think we are.
Well, the filmmakers are idiots for listening to what we want.
But that's
The
also
people
true.
need to stop listening to audiences.
And us.
Yeah, definitely. I can't believe we just sat here and moaned about this film.
I know. This film, which
How
thousands of people
boring.
worked hundreds of hours on.
Well, I was the next thing to ask, Nath, is the critical reception to the movie. How did it go down?
Critically, it didn't go down particularly badly. It did all right. In terms of box office, so it made $343 million worldwide. Notably, I think it was one of the first, if not the first, Trek movie where the overseas box office was more than the US. In the 80s, we were talking about how it was always seen as a very US-centric, it's like it's basically the US Army in space or whatever. So that's interesting. Particularly, maybe speaks to why it failed, or the fact that they've made it more of a tentpole, but it's lost some kind of support at home, or Trek's a bit dated. But that was on a budget of 185 million, which is the same as the previous movie. So in a way, that's keeping control on the costs. But I'm not sure that would have made it profitable, or it would have been a fine thing. And really, I think that's why they've not made another movie. Richard Roper from the Chicago Sun-Times said, "It's like an extended version of one of the better episodes from the original series, and I mean that in the best possible way." And Owen Gleiberman in Variety said, actually a positive review, he said, "Very familiar, old-fangled, no mystery structure with a plot that doesn't take you to many new frontiers."
Yeah.
Which I think is it's true.
Yeah, it is true.
Can I tell you some interesting things about why they didn't make a sequel?
Yes,
Or
please.
just
do.
kind of sum up where
definitely.
Trek is. So they were going to make a sequel. That was obviously always the plan. I don't think the actors were tied into contracts, but even before the film came out, J.J. Abrams was talking about another movie, and the big rumour, which was later I think substantiated, was that they were trying to bring Chris Hemsworth back in a time travel story so that Kirk could meet his own dad.
Right.
And I guess if the Marvel movies have all happened and Hemsworth is a massive star, it makes sense. That's where it could go next. Later on, I think there were reports that in 2018 they were trying to negotiate those contracts, and both Pine and Hemsworth walked away and were not happy about the money they were getting. So interesting again that it comes back to about cost and about star power. And interesting, I think, that, you know, in all those cases with Shatner and Nimoy, they always came back and they always negotiated it. And I think that this probably speaks to Shatner and Nimoy didn't have anything else to do, whereas Chris Pine is a film star. He can go and look at other things. So he did. Then there were a few different versions floating around. The way that production often works in Hollywood, I think, is that things are amorphous and then they very gradually solidify, or sometimes they just go away forever. And so you can have semi-competing projects or projects that overlap, which are all in development at the same time. So one interesting thing about this version with Hemsworth and Pine, that is the main version of the sequel, I think, that they're trying to get into production over a couple of years. And the director attached to that is a lady called S.J. Clarkson, who eventually went on to make Madam Web a couple of years ago. She's made a lot more interesting things than that, but that's the first big film that she's made. There was about a year or two period where, and I don't know if you remember this, about 2018-19, where Quentin Tarantino was like, I'd love to make an R-rated Star Trek. I love Star Trek. Let me come in.
I didn't hear about that.
So he's working with J.J. Abrams. And they have just, you know, they have a writer's workshop. Then someone actually gets paid to, Mark L. Smith, who wrote The Revenant for, the movie where Leonardo DiCaprio won his Oscar. He came in and wrote a version of that script. Eventually it goes nowhere. And then in 2019, Noah Hawley is brought in. Noah Hawley, who has made Fargo and the new Alien series, he's brought in to make a film. And Legion, yeah. So he's very versed in this kind of franchisee world. That's in production. It's going. It has a production date. They're all happy, and then there's a slight changeover of managerial kind of top level execs in Paramount, and then it stops. And at one point, I think her name was Emma Watts, is the head of production at Paramount at this time, has a choice, is kind of choosing between this ongoing sequel, this R-rated Tarantino version, and the Noah Hawley reboot, which wouldn't be a sequel. And you can kind of, it's actually interesting reflection on the discussion that we've had in terms of what do you do with it? You just keep making it with this cast who are just playing roles of these other, the original cast of the original cast, and they're kind of cosplaying that original one? Or do you do a one-off, because you can in this universe? You could go anywhere, and if you did that, why not do it with Tarantino? Why not make it R-rated? Or do you reboot younger casts, lower costs, somebody with a bit of a vision, Noah Hawley, and in the end they make none of them?
It's secret option number 4.
But Noah Hawley had this interesting quote. What I found with Star Trek was I got onto the runway and then there was a managerial changeover. In retrospect, it's not that they killed the movie, it's that I got as far as I did with a wholly original idea until someone said, well, wait a minute, what are we even doing with this valuable IP? Just giving it to him to make up a story. That's not how corporate filmmaking works. So if the call came in to do a big franchise film again, it would have to come with a sense of, we want to do your version of it. So that was interesting. It was and again, speaks to, no one just comes in and kills it. And no one comes in and says, I hate your idea. It's that they maybe don't want to make that version, but they'll just spin it up in the meantime.
If you want to know, by the way, I would have picked the Tarantino version. I think that makes good commercial sense. He's a huge director. Obviously, I don't know what he would have made, but that's why it would be fascinating.
I think it would have been awful.
But I think as a commercial prospect, just people would be like, I need to see Tarantino's Star Trek movie. What is that?
The thing is, any version of those which is good, you could do a sequel and it's so much better than the other 3. Or you could do the Tarantino one. If it's good, what an incredible. Or you could do the new one, and then it's like X-Men First Class or whatever the hell it was called. It's kind of, we've done it. I think any one of them works if they're good and it works, which is a really obvious thing to say. Then actually an Abrams-produced sequel directed by Matt Shakman was in the works and actually announced on an investor call as recently as February 2022. They announced that all the cast was coming back. And
wow.
Then over the next few days, all the cast was like, we have not signed those deals. What are you talking about?
I am surprised they haven't made another one, to be honest, because it seemed like it's not setting the world on fire at all, but it was doing fine. They like fine movies. It seems like just something that should be in the cinema every couple of years. The next Star Trek movie.
I think it makes less sense in the Star Wars, Marvel dominated world than ever, because no one's buying toys of these things.
No.
I mean, some people are, but then it's an older. It's always had that older, different audience.
You know, when Bart Simpson gets that golf game for his birthday instead of the one he wants. That's what it would be like. I want my Darth Vader toy.
Yeah.
And Marge has
You get
got
Kroll.
Let's go Kroll.
Khan, Cumberbatch, Khan doll.
That's one of the best Trek movies.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we just talked about it just to outline. Trek is back on TV, and that happens the year after Star Trek Beyond. So Star Trek Beyond comes out in the summer of 2016. Side note, September 2016 is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and they didn't wait to tie it in. They wanted the film out in time for it. So I guess the DVD came out or the Blu-ray came out for the 50th.
Weird choice.
They didn't really mention it. It's not any. It's just someone contrasted it to Bond celebrated its 60th birthday, I think that year or maybe the year after, with Spectre, and it was like they turned it into a huge event.
Right.
None of that.
I guess it's just a summer blockbuster. They just, people are going to the movies in the summer. They just like, we're going to make more money if we release in, July, August.
Someone must have done that calculation.
If we wait till September, kids will be back in school. We'll lose loads of money.
And I don't know if I'd argue with any of that. But I guess what I'd argue, I think what it shows is that they're thinking less about the legacy of Star Trek, and they're less tuned into that, and these films are less about that. So anyway, in September 2017, so on the 51st birthday of Star Trek, Discovery starts initially on CBS Access, or whatever the hell it's called, and then eventually on Paramount Plus. That came to an end just May this year.
Yeah.
I tailed off after a couple of seasons, but they made 65 episodes of Discovery. I quite enjoyed it. Then in January 2020, they begin 3 seasons of Picard. You won't know this, Rob, but the first 2 seasons, quite a bad reputation. Kurtzman is the showrunner. I told you he'd become the kind of creative overseer of all new Star Trek on TV, and he co-wrote the reboot in 2009. And I only realised this when it was pointed out to me yesterday by a thing I was reading, that the first season of Picard picks up, it actually ties into the destruction of Romulus.
Right.
And I was like, no one else cares, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So the first 2 seasons of that are quite bad. But then the 3rd season is just a Star Trek Next Generation reunion show. And they just, again, it's kind of that fan wish fulfillment. But they kind of pull it off. If I watched it again, would I enjoy it as much? I don't know, but I think you should watch it, Dave. I think you'd enjoy it. They have 2 animated series currently in production. So there's Lower Decks, which is extremely kind of Gen Z. It's very kind of funny, not quite a glib take on the Star Trek universe. That started in August 2020. Prodigy, which is a Nickelodeon animated show, October 2021. And then recently they have started Strange New Worlds. That was in May 2022. Season 3 of that is coming out next year. So all Star Trek is now, currently, is the flagship show is Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is going to lead up into the original series era. So Rob, you might not know this. I think we said in the pilot episode of the original series was Captain Pike, and then Captain Pike dies, and then they had a 2-episode arc explaining that, not dies, he doesn't come back for the main show, and then they have a 2-episode arc where they show how he's horribly maimed. Then Pike comes back in Discovery, because Discovery's set in that era. He was so popular in Discovery, he got a reboot show, and that's going to go straight into the original series era, and it's going to be interesting to see what they're doing with that. Will they try and separate the timelines? What's going to happen? Also interesting that everything they're doing is just revolving around stuff that's happened in the past at this point, except for these 2 animated shows, which I have to admit I'm less interested in, but are catering to specific audiences. So it doesn't feel like it's in a super healthy place, but
no.
Since Beyond, lots has happened, and there has been good Trek. So
yeah. Lower Decks reminds me just of a Voyager episode, which may have been called Lower Decks, which I just thought was cool, which was around 3 characters that you've never seen before who were just like low-ranking officers on Voyager in the lower decks doing their job, and they're quite disenfranchised with the ship and why they're doing this thing. And they have their thing is, I think they're kind of disciplined, and they have to they have to go and have like PT with Captain Janeway. It's just quite cool because it's good because they just refocus Captain Janeway and the ship and everything that's happening through this very different lens. Because, you know, and I just thought it was a very cool idea. I don't know whether Lower Decks is sort of similar, but
yes, I think
it is a great take on a starship, because you think you only ever see the bridge crew and they're all best mates and they're all super cool and at the top of their game and whatever. And then there's this massive crew of people who are just like, this is rubbish in space. I hate it.
There was a crossover episode with Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds where they go from being animated to being real people.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I really enjoyed.
I like that.
That was cool.
Rob, it's that difficult part of the podcast, especially, well, particularly when we've watched a movie we didn't really like. Well, I have to ask you if you have any recommendations that you might be able to share with
Anything
us.
else
Hopefully
with
some
metal
better
music
things.
in?
Yeah.
Well, I've spoken about this a lot over the course of this podcast, but this was very Mass Effect-y.
Yeah.
Like the Citadel in Mass Effect,
Right.
it's basically Yorktown, just a bit cooler. You get more of a sense of place with the Citadel, but it's just big space station, gravity-defying, massive settlement, essentially, with towers and buildings all overlapping and all on different levels. And it reminded me a lot of that. And the opening of it the opening of Mass Effect 2, where the Normandy, the iconic spaceship in Mass Effect, is just hopelessly destroyed and lasered. And the plot then revolves around Shepard, who's reconstructed piece by piece, going out and finding all of his crew again. And the one bit I did enjoy, and I thought maybe that they should have hung the movie around this a little bit more, was the scattered crash-landedness of the crew. Like, how are you going to get off this planet? Okay, it does feel like a little bit like a TV episode concept. They're on the planet, they've got to find each other. How are they going to survive on this planet? How are they going to use their talents and the resources available to them to get off this planet again? And that also reminded me, very loosely, this is quite tenuous now, of The Martian with Matt Damon, where Matt Damon plays an astronaut who's stranded on the planet Mars, and he must use all of his wherewithal, all of his skills, all of his knowledge to survive until he can be rescued.
I almost said that's a true story, but it's because it's based on a book which was relatively scientifically robust.
Yeah.
But it was
I just
not
remember
a true story.
an era where whenever I got on the train, everyone was reading The Martian. I really hate that book, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I got maybe a chapter in. It's just written in a kind of way that I can't get on board with.
It's funny because I quite dislike the movie.
Very glib.
I hate Matt Damon's, I'm going to science the shit out of this. Or
Yeah,
I'm just
I
like,
hate
well,
it. I don't like
Don't
The
be like
Martian.
that.
I don't like The Martian the film or The Martian the book, but I was reminded of it. Maybe because I don't like Star Trek Beyond either. Another film
Great recommendation.
Another film I don't like that is about just men navel gazing in space. Ad Astra.
Oh, I really didn't
I only
like
saw that once in the cinema. I've been tempted to go back and watch it again. I didn't remember enjoying
I
it.
disliked it thoroughly.
Isn't it very depressing?
Yeah, and just
It's weirdly low key.
just really boring.
Yeah.
Pick up.
Like
lads.
I hate calling things boring. I think there's very little in that word, but my God, that film put me to sleep.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of men just thinking about themselves and looking at
And
space
their dads.
and their dads,
And their dads, yeah.
which Chris Pine does a lot of in this film,
He does.
or some of. But it is a well-liked and revered science fiction film. There was one particular line in Beyond that I did find quite poignant, and that was when, I can't remember her name, like the in-charge lady who...
The Admiral.
The Admiral.
Admiral.
And
Admiral Paris, I think she
Admiral
was.
Paris.
Yes, yeah, but not a relation.
But not a relation to
And
Tom.
she talks about relative direction in space to Kirk and how there is none. And when you're in space, you don't know where you're going. There is no direction, and you know that linking to how Kirk, I guess, is feeling about his life at that stage. Like he feels adrift in the void, and
That's how
there
I
is
feel.
there is no direction. Very midlife crisisy, even though Kirk's in his early to mid 30s at this point. And Ad Astra, there's a lot of that in there as well. Just the void of space, being a literal thing they're in, but also a metaphor, I guess, for how they're viewing their lives, which is another way that another tropey way sci-fi likes to explore the human condition. So those would be my recommendations.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, only one I think you were actually recommending, but some it reminded you of. But yeah, I totally agree. I think those are good shouts. And for the very last time, and we were talking about if there's actually much value in this kind of
where are we going?
Measurement system.
We've arrived.
Well, I think that fandom is a constant journey, though, Nath. Just so that I can keep using this this measurement. You know, we have been taking regular temperature checks of Rob's kind of feeling towards Star Trek, and through warp speed, and it can increase even when you dislike a movie because it makes you realise what you really like about Star Trek. For the last time, Nathan. For the last time, Rob.
Oh my God, I didn't get that wrong.
Sorry, we're also, we're. This is like the final speed. This is how you are. Just there's no more movies to change how you feel about Star Trek, or So what warp speed are you traveling at now?
I think
we've come to a complete stop.
The helmsman and the crew they've just left it on warp 8 and they've walked away.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's probably heading towards the sun somewhere at warp 8. Eventually it's just going to be incinerated.
A Tau Zero.
But my ship that my warp speed fandom is being carried by is on a perpetual warp 8 crash course with the sun. There's no one on board anymore.
What's the ship called?
I don't know. I've not thought of that. I can't think of that quick enough.
Well, usually this is where we would look ahead to the next movie. But there is no movie to look forward to right now. But I think it's important to say that we are very much intending to keep going with this podcast in some form or another. We've really enjoyed doing this, and we hope you have too. If you ever were going to send us an email or a message or a comment, a tweet, whatever, to say that you're enjoying this and you hope we keep going, now would be a great time to do it. Please do. We have enjoyed reading all of your comments in whatever form they've arrived, and we'll look to in the future to kind of do a bit more with those, I think, and involve you, the listeners, in the ongoing series. But we should talk a little bit about the plan, and we're not going to outline it right now, but I think the plan is for us to do another bonus episode of this podcast.
Easy for us not to talk about it right now because we haven't made it yet.
No.
But in as much as we have made the plan, it's that this episode is coming out on Monday. On Wednesday, we will do a little bit of a debrief on Star Trek. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask both of you in general. I think we'll be ranking all of the 13 films.
We should try. We should definitely try.
And then we will be explaining what we'll be doing. But we won't be missing a week is the thing that we have decided. So whatever we're doing, we'll be back with next Monday.
Yes. So hopefully that's something. Hopefully that's good news and something to look forward to. 2 episodes this week, and then straight on till morning next Monday with whatever comes next. I'm excited to discuss with you guys what that's going to be and what form it takes.
It's like the end of a Star Trek movie. Where are we going?
Yeah,
out there, somewhere
to the next episode. So yeah, we've reached the end of our Star Trek.
Hey, we set out to do something and we did it.
I know, that feels good, right? This is genuinely something we talked about doing for years in one form or another. And
that's why we won't stop, because if we stop, it'll be more years.
Exactly. As Rob says, we're at warp 8 now. We just got to keep on trekking,
going into the sun,
and see where we end up. But thank you so much for listening. I do think it is still relevant to ask Rob for the last time, because I do think you can fall off of fandoms. How else will
we end the series?
Exactly. Rob, are you still a Star Trek fan?
Somehow, yes.
Thank God. You've been listening to Redshirt Cinema Club. If you've enjoyed listening, rating and reviewing the podcast would really help us out. We'll be back next Monday with another episode, and in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to redshirtcinemaclub@gmail.com, where a team of highly trained tribbles await your correspondence. See you next week.